Hello and welcome to the Discovery Roundtable, the episode-by-episode discussion show for Star Trek Discovery, from the perspective of Star Trek Online players and Foundry authors. I'm your host, Drogyn1701, and with me is my co-host, Greendragoon.
Greetings.
And our guest this week is Primar13.
Hello.
And we're glad to finally be able to have you on the show. It's worked out timeline-wise, and you found an episode you wanted to come on and discuss with us, so we're happy to have you.
We've only been fighting with schedules for 4 months.
If you could introduce yourself a little bit.
I'm Marco. I've been playing Stowe since 2013, I believe, is when I joined in. Before Legacy of Romulus, but right after New Romulus was added to the game. So that's about where I came in. I'm kind of a Foundry pain in the neck. I don't actually publish anything. I just goof around in the editor and drive you all insane.
You're what we call a dabbler in the Foundry. You like to sort of try things.
With a sledgehammer.
and tell us about what you were actually trying just earlier this week.
So we were joking about the Shenzhou and the Discovery not having bridges in game. We were talking about with the assets that we had that underslung bridge was probably not going to be buildable in the Foundry. And of course,
so 30 minutes slanted windows.
And of course, 30 minutes after I said that, I managed to build a mock-up of it that looked kind of sort of passable. In the Foundry's smallest map, something that I said could never possibly ever be used for anything of value 4 years ago when it was added.
Which is the observation lounge.
Which is very problematic to work in because it has about 1.5 meters of empty space in all directions around the outside of the room, and it has a forced skyfile and lighting in it. So you can't even sink a console down more than 1 or 2 units because you hit the bottom of the map, and you can't put most assets in because they're actually bigger than the map.
But it was a nifty concept, I thought, because it really is about the only map we can think of that has those slanting windows like you would need for the underslung bridge of the Shenzhou.
The only other thing I could ever think to do would be to build it within Earth space dock, looking down into the main shuttle bay. But you wouldn't. That's a
possibility. But you can only set your mission in that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you would only have one pane of glass.
I bet you could have fun with it if, you were visiting a museum piece. Mm-hmm. So you had the walker inside a dock, as a museum piece, and then you set it there. That said, I personally have some ideas about how you could do underslung windows.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'll pursue it in another Foundry Roundtable episode.
I mean, I've been trying to build something in the Earth space dock map for forever, but the lighting in it was so problematic when it first launched because it's got a very specific lighting system when they built it. And since we don't have the actual sky file that they used, it's very hard to duplicate without either loads of fog or black spots or lighting that's overly bright. But I've been trying to build something in it forever, just haven't managed to pull anything off.
Well, before we get on to this week's episode, which is episode 12, Vaulting Ambition, I want to be able to talk about something which I'm happy to be able to now, because I've wanted to basically structure the show like this since the beginning, which is to also, in addition to talking about each episode as it airs, also talk about what's going on with Discovery elements in Star Trek Online. And now we actually finally have some. Because just today, we're recording this on Tuesday, just today they launched the latest lockbox, which is Discovery Lockbox, and it has the Crossfield class USS Discovery, and it has the Klingon sarcophagus ship, and it has the Walker class in the Lobi store, as well as various other little things in the Lobi store, like the Federation rifle and the EV suit, and several other different random things in the lockbox. So we're finally getting some more Discovery related content for Stowe, which is fantastic.
I was so disappointed it didn't include the torchbearer outfit for the Klingons.
I think they would have gone over their asset limit just a little bit on that one.
Well, I mean, I'm just amazed at the level of detail they put into that sarcophagus ship. It's intricate beyond all belief and must be just almost screen accurate. if not 100%.
And I mean, I've even been looking at my Discovery today. I have a couple pictures I'll show you. If you haven't got a chance to get an up-close and personal look at that ship, the detail on it is ridiculous. It's got lens flares on the phaser arrays. It's got individually lit windows with accent lights on the exterior of the hull. It's got accent lights on the hull lighting up naming and sensor arrays, and it's got lens flares built into the ship. It's just got a lot of stuff going on.
So never let it be said the devs aren't passionate.
No. And they must have gotten some great reference material to go with it. I have been, obviously, you have to work at it. Some of us do. If you're not lucky enough to actually win one, you have to work at it to go ahead and obtain one of these. I've been able to get the the Walker class so far, and I've only because it just came out today. I've only been able to do one Borg Red Alert with it, which went pretty well. I was able to do some pretty good damage so far. My build isn't quite done. Still working on a lot of that, but it's not a big ship, but it doesn't have what you'd call a great turn rate. It's definitely reminds me of a Miranda class as far as something to fly. The new Miranda class, the T6.
I believe both the Walker and the Crossfield have the same turn rate, which is on the high end for a cruiser. So it would be equivalent to something like the Arbiter battlecruiser or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you the Crossfield has 2 engineering consoles, so I have a RCS on it as well as the Martok console, and I've been having no issues with turning on it.
I just added the RCS console after I played that Red Alert. Otherwise, I'm going for something, maybe with mines and dual beam banks in the front, something like that. Now, you, as you mentioned, have the Crossfield class Primar. Have you been able to actually get in and fly it in a mission yet?
I ran the featured episode in it.
So what did you think?
It's a lot of fun. There's some glitchiness with the animations on the new console, but that's expected on launch day, where it would just randomly flip in the middle of a fight, which is kind of funny, but it was a little annoying. But it'll get worked out. But it is really cool. The saucers, the rings do spin when you do the jumps. There's a glitch with the Discovery fire, the weapons on it. If you're using the Discovery-specific ones, they don't fire from the right place, but the regular ones do launch out pretty well. The phaser emitters on the ship are pretty cool, how they're laid out, and they have built-in lens flares, which is pretty interesting to look at.
Now, none of us, unfortunately, have the sarcophagus ship yet, so we can't really say how that thing's going to fly. It's, from my impression, it's going to be a big whale, basically.
Yeah, it's very, very expensive right now. That's why no one has it.
Yeah, last I looked, it was like almost, some of them were over $1 billion EC, and one of them was just under that.
When I looked this morning, it wasn't on the exchange yet.
Well, it's just the first day, so the prices will come down because they're just, regular lockbox ships. They have those odds, so, it's not going to be one of the ultra rare ones. The other little development that we had is we had an update to the Foundry with a whole bunch of costumes, including the Discovery uniforms that you see us wearing here, which obviously opens up a whole new sort of setting for us to make missions in.
Yes, and if I can give a little plug to our other show, Foundry Roundtable, we actually built a Discovery-style hallway in that episode.
Which we think comes out pretty good. Obviously, we're limited to only the assets that we have available, none of which are from Discovery, all of which are from Stowe, and a lot of from early Stowe maps. But we exercised our creativity, and I think it turned out quite well. And we're going to hopefully be expanding on that and making some rooms and things in future shows. So, all right, let's turn to our episode of the week, which is Vaulting Ambition, another in the Mirror Universe plotline that we've been in here for a couple episodes now. Basically, Burnham, the Emperor has arrived and requests Burnham's presence, so she takes Lorca and goes to the palace, which is actually a ship. What do you guys think of that ship?
It seems to be like it was conquered Romulan tech and implemented into this massive monster of a ship.
I don't know. I mean, there's not enough familiar design to it to really assign it to anything specific.
what I'm looking at is the fact is that if you look at it, because there's a couple shots floating around the internet, it looks very much like the body half of a Daenerys with the Singularity core right in the center.
It does look a little bit reminiscent of that, yeah. But that I don't know that it's hard to say what the intentions of the designers are there, because I haven't seen any comments that say yes, it's definitely Romulan.
Well, there's also the main comment of they said back on Aftershock on episode 3 or 4 that Romulan is a bad word and they don't mention Romulans.
in the writer's room, yeah.
Yeah. I did like
so
that.
Does that extend to the mirror universe as well?
We'll find out. I do like that Mirror Stamets' lab was just a reshuffle of Giorgio's office.
Yeah. Obviously, when you go to the mirror universe, sometimes there's a lot of reusing of sets. Mm-hmm. Because the mirror universe is like so close to ours that everything looks the same too. I mean, even not just the characters look the same. Everything else looks the same, except of course, there's obviously no giant palace ship in the Prime universe, is there?
That we know of.
Maybe
Abba Marcus still lives.
or get this, okay, so in America here we have Air Force One that the president rides on. It's a special 747. What if there's a counterpart in Star Trek Online that the Federation president travels on?
I had something like that years ago, Federation One. I think I used an Imperial class when I designed it, ironically.
So called Starfleet One.
Probably the ugliest ship in stow.
But I used it because it had a huge Federation logo on the side.
Oh, yeah, that's clever. But maybe that's the equivalent of Emperor Giorgio's palace is, whatever the Federation president rides around in.
So be honest here, who here half expected her to show up in the Defiant?
Maybe a little, yeah.
Yeah.
You'd expect the Emperor to sort of maintain control over that ship for a long time, and actually that's sort of referenced here, because she quite clearly, as soon as so let's back up and recap a little bit. So Giorgio and she has this audience chamber, and Burnham comes in. They have a meeting. She presents Lorca as the prisoner. Lorca gets taken away. She brings out Kelpians and says, "Choose one." Who apparently later gets eaten.
$1 million question
turned
on
into
that.
soup.
Was that Saru?
It looked a little like Saru, didn't it?
Because that's been the biggest argument I've been having in chat rooms all week. Was I didn't necessarily think it was, because all three of them looked alike, so I couldn't figure out which one was which to begin with. But everybody was saying, based on her reaction, it wasn't just, oh, I'm eating this thing. It's, I just ate my best friend.
I think she ate her best friend.
I kind of do, too. I don't want to, but I think it was.
It was disgusting.
So my next question is, which one was more terrifying, when the Klingons ate Giorgio or when she ate Saru?
In fairness, we did not have to watch them eat Giorgio.
That's true.
Plus, we had more time to like Saru, so I think it was the latter. It was a huge shocker.
What is it with this show and eating people? Is there one particular writer in the writer's room who just keeps pitching that?
Like obsessed with cannibalism. Which I guess technically isn't true, since no one species has eaten their own species.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm thinking we know who it is who's just not in the writer's room anymore. But let's not go there.
Well, Brian Fuller did do Hannibal, so maybe that's a leftover.
Oh, bad choice of words.
Exactly. Okay, so I thought it was interesting how, for an authoritarian dictator like Giorgio, I mean, she pretty much has to be paranoid all the time, which really comes out here, and she immediately starts accusing Burnham of being in league with Lorca, which, it seems fairly clear after her explanation that, probably the mirror version was.
Mm-hmm.
Then that begs the question of, how did Mirror Burnham die? Or did she?
Yes. Or did she? Because she disappeared while tracking Lorca. Yeah. So
they thought Lorca had killed.
My guess is, based on his seeking out of Burnham as his only hope, I'm guessing that she probably did.
Now, it's entirely possible that the Empire, in fact, killed Burnham, but falsified the records to make it look like she never committed treason. Maybe because Giorgio had a soft spot for her, or they didn't want to make it seem like a captain could betray the or another captain could betray
Well,
the
it
Empire.
seemed like Giorgio didn't necessarily have proof that Burnham was in league with Lorca. It's more like she suspected, and because she's the Emperor, if she suspects, then you're guilty.
Maybe she seemed pretty convinced that
Yeah.
like she had, she had decent intel that Burnham had betrayed her. That obviously
and maybe it's
our Burnham was not aware of.
The length of her absence, because it's been years, right, since Mirror Burnham disappeared.
No, it should only have been 6 months.
Oh, it was only months. Okay.
6+ months. I mean, obviously, I think the idea is that.
Well, I mean that actually makes sense because
all these things happened right around the battle of the binary stars.
That's right, because Mirror Lorca has clearly only been in our universe for a little while.
Yeah.
Which obviously we jump to the big reveal of this episode, which everybody who's listening, I hope you have watched the episode. But yes, Lorca is from the Mirror universe. Another fan theory proven correct.
Yeah, I mean, I was a little surprised to see this one finally come true. Just because when you say it, it's such an off the wall theory, which is why the writers thought we'd never guess it.
Well, there's something to be said for picking up on the story hints and understanding the foreshadowing.
I mean, I don't want to dismiss the cleverness of the fans and their ability to suss out where a plot's going. But I wonder how much the internet and the fact that this is coming out in a time of the mature internet has to do with the fact that we do kind of like collectively suss out these plot lines.
If it had been pre-internet days, like one guy would have had this theory and he would have told his two friends at school over lunch.
But a big part of this,
that's as far as it would have gone.
How much of this was Frakes mentioning it at the convention that a Mirror Universe episode was coming?
Because we had a lot of
Mirror trouble he got in for that.
I don't know that he got into any trouble, but I think that probably put everybody on the path. Because I mean, for a while they were like the whole thing's set in the Mirror Universe and all this crazy stuff, and then as time kind of went on,
I think it was that comment plus Lorca's actions, which are definitely a little bit not your typical Starfleet captain.
Yeah.
Well, a lot.
But I think if that comment hadn't have been made, the reveal after 10 would have been a lot bigger.
Might have been.
Yeah.
But in case, it's a thing where okay, that theory has been proven correct. Now what? And we don't really know what's going to happen next.
Well, a couple of possibilities as I see it. I'm 50-50 on whether or not Mirror Lorca is going to survive the end of the season now. Once he was outed as the Mirror Universe, his life expectancy dropped significantly. Because basically they're setting him up to be the villain of
big bad.
Season 1.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah.
So now I'm a little sad at this because Jason Isaacs is a great actor who's done an incredible job, and I don't want him to go away. But yeah,
I'm kind of mad that they had to make him a villain.
Yeah, you can't keep him around. I mean, he would never be trustworthy. No one would ever trust him again. So
I wish they would have been able to bring him in here without making him the bad guy.
So my other theory is we don't know what happened to Prime Lorca. So that is the one avenue I can see where you get to keep Lorca without having to keep Mirror Lorca.
Yeah, that's possible. We assume that he went down with the ship, but what if he didn't and Mirror Lorca has him somewhere stashed away?
Yeah.
I suspect we'll find out next episode because it sounds like this next episode is going to be a recap of things that happened from Mirror Lorca's perspective.
I didn't see that, though. I think what the footage we were seeing of him and Landry is him breaking her out of the shuttle bay because
that was my thought as well.
Because Captain No Name said we had to build an entire fleet of agonizers in the aft bay for all of your people. Well, ain't that convenient to put all of his cronies in one room? How could that come bite us in the butt?
I'll tell you this. All of this answers your question, Greendragoon, of why did Lorca specifically manipulate things to get Burnham on his ship?
Yes, it does.
Because they have this prior relationship in his universe. And because he apparently has a pattern of doing this, he also got our Prime Landry on his ship, where clearly he has some sort of, Mirror Landry is one of his compatriots.
So I'm just going to point out that next week's episode title is What's Past is Prologue.
It might have some flashbacks.
It might have, and they've done flashbacks before. Obviously, it didn't become the regular thing we originally expected, but
One thing I would love. Oh, sorry. Continue.
I was just go ahead.
I was going to say one thing I would love to see is Mirror Cornwell as an interrogator. That would be nice. That would be a flip on the Mirror without being too cheesy.
where the Admiral is just a crony.
Well, the fact of her being a psychologist.
Yeah,
that's what I mean.
Well, because what was it in the Enterprise episode in A Mirror Darkly? Phlox was still a doctor, but he was, like specialized in torture and things like that, didn't he?
Yes.
So it's like using the medical knowledge that his Prime universe counterpart would also have, but in an evil way. And that's always kind of the fun part of doing a mirror universe episode. It's like, taking your own characters and it's like, okay, what are they like in this other reality? You can make them completely different or, have subtle similarities, things like that. I have done a mirror universe Foundry mission, which ironically included your player character infiltrating the mirror universe and taking the place of their counterpart, not unlike this string of episodes. So yeah, and it was fun taking some of the characters that I'd actually written in other Foundry missions and putting them as their mirror counterparts. So I took, the Admiral from one of my Prime Universe missions, and I made her the first officer who's, maybe she's trying to kill you, your mirror universe counterpart, or maybe not. Who knows? All right, so we also had a parallel plot line, the B plot, back on the Discovery with Stamets. We finally get back to Stamets and what's going on in his head.
In Shroomland?
In Shroomland, which, in fine Star Trek tradition, it turns into basically he's running around the corridors of Discovery. Because when you go into your head, it looks like the things that you know.
Yeah, which was kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, the whole time he's walking around the hallway, I'm like, okay, when's the jump scare? When's the jump scare? Because
Tardigrade shows up and attacks.
Well, actually, no, with the music and the way it was, come on, it was shot like it was going to happen, and it just never happened.
There was some neat sort of, creepy imagery with these, I don't know, the corridor getting sort of, corrupted by tendrils of things.
And with the spinning light beams coming in through all the windows. That was kind of cool.
Yeah. So it started out kind of funny. I mean, it started out with the conversation between him and his mirror counterpart, revealing that basically the mirror counterpart has been jumping into his head at intervals all this time.
No, beginning with the best joke on the planet.
Remind us?
That God is very angry at you.
Yeah. I'm really enjoying Anthony Stamets' performance here.
Oh yeah,
both as himself and then as his high on shrooms self and then his mirror universe self.
Which seems very similar to the high on shrooms self.
A little bit, yes. So you assume that maybe that was sort of the influence of the mirror counterpart.
So does that mean that his mirror universe self is actually a less grumpy version of himself?
Just a little crueler.
So if you're a grumpy guy in our universe, you're a totally nice and happy-go-lucky guy in the other one because it's mirrored. You see?
Oh, it's like that. It's like the discussion with Rom all over again.
And that was a great discussion on basically the sort of implausibility of the premise of the mirror universe.
Yeah, but this does add in a new element to the plot, which is the decline and destruction of the mycelial network.
Yes.
Yeah, because we've always been thinking they were going to have to write off Spore Drive at some point. I just figured they'd wait a couple seasons.
So it sounded
but the problem is if the mycelial network itself breaks down, I think that has sort of universe-ending implications.
Yeah. We also don't know why it's breaking down.
Good job breaking it. But it's our fault, obviously.
We don't know why it's breaking down. We don't know. It seemed like they were coming out of it like they were going to try and save it, that the goal was to try and save it.
I think it was Mirror Stamets' fault for sure, but it was along the lines of how were they going to fix it. But just from a canon timeline point of view, they were going to have to somehow write out this tech at some point.
Oh, yeah.
To explain how it didn't exist. I just figured they'd wait at least until season 2 or 3 to do that.
Yeah, or they do something. I always figured something would happen where they basically decide that this was tech that isn't really worth pursuing. at this point, kind of like transwarp tech with the Excelsior.
And I thought that's where we were going at the end of 10, where we thought we were going to go back to a starbase and live happily ever after, and then
Come on, that was not going to happen on episode 10.
Yeah, I know.
Hey, sometimes that doesn't happen on the season finale either. Enterprise, looking at you. Yeah, we won the thing, and then we're going to go home and celebrate, and then suddenly we're thrown back in time.
Oh, yeah.
For those of you who don't remember the end of season 3.
Because what we really need are Discovery space Nazis.
Interestingly enough, with the mirror universe here, I'm seeing more like Roman influences in the command structure and things like that, rather than Nazi influences.
Yeah, I loved her 40-word name, by the way. That was kind of nice.
Yeah.
You realize we've had 3 different series do some take on space Nazis?
Yep, and
it's
different...
a recurring thread.
The Star Trek edition?
Personally, my favorite was the one on Voyager.
With the holographic.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people aren't up on that episode, but I like it.
I thought it was fine. I enjoyed it.
But in this case, we're not doing space Nazis. We're doing evil space Romans. So we also get what I thought was probably the best scene of the episode, and it's a very, very touching scene with Stamets and Culber.
Yeah, that was good.
If their whole relationship ends there, I think to me it will feel good.
Yeah, they kind of needed a scene like that.
I don't. Yeah, they need. It's got resolution to it.
It's best of a bad situation is the best way I can explain it.
But it left
we don't want him to go, but it tied it up well.
Absolutely not. But it left me feeling satisfied in that regard. But I think I still feel like their hints after the episode where he died lead me to believe that there's still going to be more there.
Yeah.
Maybe Colbert kind of becomes the embodiment of the mycelial network.
That would be odd.
The avatar of the shrooms.
See, yeah, that we're just into a whole weird area here, man.
If anything ever deserved to be a hashtag.
We're getting into V'ger and avatars and Okay.
So it was definitely nice to see a lot of Saru as well, especially him going up against Mary that was pretty nice.
Yeah. That's the C plot, which you're going to get to next year. So Voke / Tyler is having a breakdown and is going nuts. And so Saru has to pay L'Rell a couple visits to try and get her to help. She at first refuses because it's,
undignified.
It's the consequence of the mission that he undertook voluntarily. So she says, that's the way the cookie crumbles, basically. Or, whatever Klingon version of that saying there is. But then he finally gets her to help. And basically she reveals that there was really a Lieutenant Tyler who was captured at the Battle of Binary Stars. And I'm not 100% clear on what exactly they did, if they sort of fused his consciousness.
So as I understand it, they pulled out his DNA so that they could rebuild Vok in his image, at which point they plugged in his memories.
Yeah, it sounded like there was definite like physical tissue taken from Tyler to create this Vok. So it's more than just they made Vok look like Tyler.
There was a lot of regeneration and stuff going on there.
Genetic manipulation. So in a very real sense, Vok is Tyler.
He is now. It looks like he's going to be Tyler kind of permanently.
It does
I think
look
is
like
were
that,
were going with that, especially with her funeral yell.
Yeah, so that definitely seemed like, and the fact that he stops speaking Klingon at the end, and it definitely felt like she killed him or killed Vok.
Which is sad because I wanted it to go the other way. I wanted Vok back. Now that Tyler is not Tyler, the whole PTSD storyline doesn't have as much impact to me as the unnamed Klingon ruling the world.
Yeah, and we might miss Vok's sort of redemption arc, basically, because he got completely shut out by Cole and left to die, and so we need his return to glory.
I think I would have liked that one a little bit more than whatever Tyler's going to do.
In order to make that one work well, I think they would have had to have made the Klingon War the main arc, and they opted to not do that. They ended up. I think here's my opinion on this, and I feel like they tried to do two different stories in one season, and I don't think they did justice for either in the result.
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe the real overarching storyline here is Lorca.
Yeah,
I believe that's where they're going.
But I mean, just in a hypothetical scenario here, imagine they did season 1 is the arc of the Klingon War. We've got the intrigue with Voq being Tyler and him coming out and actually being able to do something as an infiltrator instead of just being outed almost immediately and his plans never coming to fruition. But it ultimately culminates in maybe the end of the Klingon War in the final episode. They do the jump back. That's when you get the stranded in the mirror universe, and then season 2 is all about the mirror universe and them trying to get back and then further developing it more, and then at the end of that's when it's revealed that Lorca is from the mirror universe.
I think that's what they were trying to attempt with this whole chapter system, but I think no matter what, they would have had to somehow turn Tyler back into Voq for it to really succeed.
The way they've set him up, that doesn't quite seem possible.
Correct.
Yeah, but I mean, then you could have developed this Voq as Tyler in a way that, yeah, he stopped at the end of season 1, but once they become trapped in the mirror universe, they're kind of stuck with him. They can't get rid of him. I mean, that wouldn't be humane. So as the season progresses, they're kind of forced to maybe they're forced to use him, despite the fact that he's a Klingon, because maybe Tyler was important in the mirror universe, and Voq needs to take Tyler's place. And
they'd have to do that,
they have to work together, and that kind of develops Voq in a way that you really couldn't in the current situation.
And I thought maybe that was something that they were going to do, is that he would end up being, someone that the Federation could use and to make peace. But
that said, I like the character of Tyler too, so I'm somewhat conflicted on that
as well. Shahzad Latif's performance has been fantastic.
Yeah, that's why I'm really going to miss Voq.
So yeah, I mean, what you're suggesting makes sense, because we have these two plot lines that don't necessarily
mesh.
They'll complement each other well.
And this is not the first time this has happened in television. In fact, it just happened recently, because I was watching the third season of Bosch on Amazon Prime, and it basically had two plot lines that almost completely did not intersect and did not affect each other at all. But they still, were two plot lines that lasted the whole season, and I didn't feel like that was really a good way to do it.
I've seen a few TV shows break it up so where they'll actually kind of become two mini seasons with only loose threads between them. So you'll have some plot for the first half, usually before the winter break, and then when you come back from the winter break, there's the second half, which is more of kind of exploring something different. That's set up by the first one, but not necessarily connected back. But usually those are shows that are like a full season length, so like 20 to 22 episodes. So it's not as big of a deal that they've only got 11 or 12 in each mini-season.
What we used to think of as a full season length.
Yeah.
Because nobody gets 22 episodes anymore.
Prime.
No, not unless you're NCIS and those kinds of shows. But what you're saying is like what Battlestar Galactica used to do, where the two halves of each season were pretty much distinct from each other in terms of plot lines, and kind of what Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. has been doing lately. I don't know what they're doing this season. I'm not caught up, but last season they did basically 3 independent plots.
Yeah, and
they were separate from each other. They didn't those 3 plots did not run the whole length of the season. It was 1 and then 2 and then 3.
And then they rebranded the show for each plot line.
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell if that's something they were trying to do with Discovery and they just don't have enough episodes to do it, or if
I think they had to try and split it up because of production issues. I don't think they were ready to release the full season, and they had to get something out the door, so they decided to split between 2 chapters and push what they could and then come back with the rest.
And that's entirely true. We can't fully know what the production hassles kind of effect was on the final product.
Well, it kind of makes me excited for season 2, because I mean, even with all of that, this first season has been really good. And so with more time on pre-production and that sort of thing, and not burdened with introducing anything, season 2 could really take off.
Knowing that we only have 3 episodes left is kind of terrifying.
Yeah, it's not a lot of time to wrap up a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And a really long break in between, because it's going to be, 2019, 2020 before we get the next bit?
That's what the rumors are.
Probably not 20. But, it's not unheard of these days for that long of a gap between seasons of television shows, especially big, expensive ones. I mean, Game of Thrones had a huge break between seasons.
But it sounds like they're going to take that time to really kind of sit down and figure out the show, refine it more.
What's interesting to me, though, is that you might lose a bunch of characters in this first season. So maybe that's a chance for some of these secondary characters to become main characters. Some of these guys on the bridge.
And I hear we're going to get a lot more of them this coming week.
I did see that, yeah. Which is fantastic. They've set up a really interesting looking bridge crew. And I don't want to see them use it more.
Because one thing I've been thinking from the beginning, because a lot of people were not real happy with the mutiny at the beginning, I didn't think the mutiny was a Burnham plotline. I thought it was going to be more of a Saru plotline. He witnessed this first one and then I always figured we were heading straight for Saru having to mutiny against Lorca. Well, then we got thrown in the mirror universe and it flipped everything on its head. But I figured that's where we were headed, was Saru.
You are probably going to get Saru versus Lorca here.
Well, we're going to get it next week, but I thought we were going to get it because of his actions and not who he is. So I thought that's where we were headed. I thought the original mutiny was going to be more so that it was that much harder when Saru had to do it at the end of the season. But now we're in the mirror universe and nothing's right.
So what do you think about Saru as the captain? Not the acting captain, not the first officer, but the one and only captain.
We could be headed for that.
I think he's going to be that this week, and I am more than happy with it.
I am too, because Doug Jones is someone I followed for a long time. Ever since he was on Buffy and he was on Hellboy, because he's just a fantastic actor visually. And then finally they started letting him, have lines and stuff, and he turns out to be a great actor just all around.
And now when you give him like this, where you give him creative control to help build this species and this whole storyline, and he's just having a ball with it. His scenes with Mary in this episode were nuts.
It definitely seems like he has grown somewhat since, because we had the one where he was put in charge and he was
unsure of himself.
He was trying to do the right thing, but kind of at the wrong time, and
being constantly countermanded by Michael's presence. And now we've got this where he's totally within his own realm and they're not fighting each other anymore. And I think he's got the crew's back, or the crew has his back, and I think he's more than sufficient to be the captain going forward.
So,
well, coincidentally, on the exact day that we are discussing this, they released the Academy Award nominations, and Doug Jones's film, The Shape of Water, got like 13 nominations, although I don't think he himself was nominated for like Best Actor or Best Supporting Actor. Which
I don't believe he was.
Because, of course, he's, he plays a creature, again, in that one.
With a striking resemblance to Abe Sapien.
I said at one point, because I haven't actually seen the film, and I very much want to, but I said that, it's like, I don't care what happens. I'm just going to assume that this is the origin story for Abe Sapien.
That's what we all thought when the first trailer came out. And then Kieran was like, you guys do know this isn't related, right?
Or is it?
I don't know. I haven't seen it yet either, but it's on my list.
Or it can't be, because someone else is doing Hellboy now. So so let's see. Obviously, we're still in the Mirror Universe next episode, because of what we see in the preview pretty much confirms that. I suppose the question is, and I asked this a couple episodes ago, at what point are we going to get back to the Prime Universe, or will we ever? What do you guys think?
I think I think it definitely seems like the thing with Lorca is coming to a head. They're going to have to spend at least one episode like racing to save the mycelial network and/or getting through it before it collapses and back into their own universe. They also still have the intel on the Klingons that they have to get back to the Federation. It would kind of suck for that to not pay off. So I think they will get back to the Prime Universe this season. I don't know whether it'll be this episode or if it won't be until the final episode.
And I'm sitting here looking at the episode titles for the next one. So we've got What's Past as Prologue, followed by The War Without, The War Within, and then Will You Take My Hand. So I'm not quite sure where any of these are going.
Yeah.
I just have this image now of, in the episode Will You Take My Hand, of Lorca holding out a hand to Burnham saying, "Join me, and together we can rule the galaxy."
Yeah, I was kind of thinking that too.
As Emperor and Underling.
Which, of course, our Burnham would never do that. Mirror Burnham? Hard to say. So, one thing we didn't touch on in this episode, which I thought was actually kind of fun, was when Georgiou is threatening Burnham with execution. Burnham basically just immediately drops all the pretense and says, "Yeah, I'm from the other universe."
Followed by her decapitating everybody in the room.
Yeah. Which, what it says to me is basically that, ever since Empress Sato, I think the emperors have maintained a strict control over the information that there is this parallel universe.
Yeah.
I think it's been something that's been an emperor's eyes only thing.
Yes.
And that's
Which
actually
is
kind
why
of a cool
the
touchstone.
The file that Burnham has, which apparently actually people have been able to read from the screen, magnifying it, is about, basically the episode of Enterprise. It references the ISS Enterprise under Commander Archer going off and finding the Defiant and all that. And of course, most of it's redacted, but still.
I did like the look on Michelle's face when she flips over that comm badge. It was perfect. And then her little bit of negotiation back and forth, where she's like, "Well, give me your ship tech." We're all thinking, because that can't end badly.
Yeah.
Apparently, in a couple episodes, it may not matter.
Yeah.
And I'm really hoping Saru is not going to come to this giant capital fortress with his tiny little Discovery and think he's going to make it out alive.
Well,
So-
I was watching that scene. I was like, I have to be thinking at this point that both of these two are thinking about how they can double cross the other, because Burnham is not going to want to give the spore drive technology to the Mirror Universe people because they're all, megalomaniacal jerks who are going to conquer everybody with it. And, Georgiou is never going to let her go.
And I think Georgiou wants the tech so that she can jump universes and conquer.
Absolutely.
I will say, obviously having Lorca going on a rampage is going to complicate all of this, and I would say the wild card is still Mirror Stamets.
Definitely.
I don't know what he's going to do.
We don't really know what his intentions are, do we? He seems like sort of an amiable guy, but he's still Mirror Universe, a product of that sort of upbringing.
The question, though, was what was he using the tech for? If he wasn't building a Spore Hub drive, what was he using the tech for?
That's a good question. And what happened to
just
the ISS
high,
Discovery?
Man,
Yeah,
and they haven't addressed the ISS Discovery yet.
I don't think he was ever on the Discovery
No, he
to
wasn't.
begin with. So what was that ship design? And is it even the same class of ship?
Well, obviously, the other Mirror Universe ships recognize the Discovery. So there is an ISS Discovery that is Crossfield class.
And it looks the same.
But yeah, that means that the ISS Discovery didn't have a spore drive. Unless Mirror Stamets handed off the designs, but didn't necessarily go himself.
Well, his buddy could have gone. His buddy, Mr. Half-Melted guy.
Yeah, the guy in our universe who got killed on the other ship.
On the Glen, or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Glenn, that's the name of it.
So his buddy could have been on the Discovery, for all we know.
True. Okay, that could work. Although it's still weird that Georgiou would be so interested in the spore drive technology if they already had a working spore drive.
It did seem like maybe Mirror Stamets' research was going in a different direction.
Yeah.
That was my interpretation.
Me if it was being reused as some sort of weapon and not a piece of propulsion.
Yeah.
But he was also wearing a medical pin, too. Wasn't
Really?
he?
I didn't catch that.
On his left chest. He had
I'd have to go back and see that.
He had what looked like a medical pin on his chest. But I could have been
is
wrong.
the medical one different from science?
No, I mean it looks like the snake and cross medical pin that they use in our everyday world.
Ah, okay.
But that could also be one of the murderous awards that they've been handing out that Tilly's covered in.
Now another question is, did Lorca know about Mirror Stamets' experiments, and was that how he got to our universe?
Good question. I mean, yeah, that's
he had to get to our universe at some point somehow. How did he do that? We know there are different ways. You can have an accident with a wormhole and it'll send you off, but obviously they don't know about the Bajoran wormhole yet.
So, Marco, I am looking at a screenshot, and you're correct. He is wearing a medical staff on one side on his uniform.
Interesting.
Okay.
At least what appears to be a medical staff. So you might be right. He might have been taking a little bit different approach to Spore.
Interesting. I know there's a lot of unanswered questions, which I think is fantastic. Because we have had all of these fan theories, or at least 2 or 3 confirmed. We know Tyler is Vogue, but we really don't know where that's heading. We know that Lorca's from the Mirror Universe, but we don't really know where that's heading. So we've got 3 episodes left and we really have no idea where it's going. And I think that's fantastic. All right, final thoughts on this episode, Greendragoon?
Interesting. I mean, obviously the fan theories proved true, which was a little surprising, but overall, it was definitely a kind of a climax in the season, and so now it's kind of riding it out into the final confrontation.
All right, Marco?
I definitely liked it. It was nice to be able to watch something that didn't have something ridiculously controversial in it, so that I could actually talk to people without fighting. That was fun. I definitely liked the whole Shakespearean aspects of it. That's kind of how it got its name. There was a lot going on. That was a lot of fun.
I did like the, sometimes there's a really obvious call out to the title of the episode, and there was definitely a good one in this one.
But it
she
fit.
said something. The end ends up with her, saying the end of the line is vaulting ambition, which was a good one and a good dramatic delivery, Shakespearean even. So, all right, thanks everyone for joining us, and until our next episode, enjoy the final frontier.
Till next time.